And there we have it, another live stream. Had to wait for the buffering so that we got a good launch. And I think we have that. Started out with a good lunch, now the good launch. Here we go. We're talking about guppies today in the pre-chat. Pre-chat, what you ask, is where we're all hanging out in the chat room for the live stream. At least an hour before we go live. Took down a bunch of questions that people want answered, so we're going to answer those. Some of the topics include, if I can find the right thing, cheap and expensive guppies, kind of what's the difference, why, which ones are sellable, which ones are kind of breedable. And you would think like all guppies are breedable. Actually, there's some differences there. Some of the things like why they're great in hard water, go into that. They eat algae, genetics, why are guppies weaker than they were 20 years ago, care requirements, water parameters, basic stuff, we're going to cover that. Keeping lines pure, the healthiest starter guppies. So those are all some of the questions that were asked before we went live, and I'll try to address all those here throughout the beginning or so. So I think we're going to have a good stream tonight. I've been running around with my head cut off because we're getting ready for Peru. I leave on Sunday, so that's only a few days away. And we'll start addressing some of the things that are likely to happen during the live stream. There's more goldfish in there. They are extra derpy because even though we quarantine them at the store, that guy, and that one, and those two are all brand new. Stressed out, one of them has ick, so we have ick-X in the water. We also have 25 pounds of salt, so there's that going on. And so if you see them kind of just like, oh, I'm all spaced out, it's kind of normal. They're doing their thing. The other one's still doing great, and you guys will see that coming up in fish room vlogs and all that ongoing process. I was up till 11 o'clock at night working on this tank to make sure it was in at least suitable form for today. I mean, I would have been doing that regardless of a live stream, but yes. So, all right. Guppy topic number 1. So why are guppies so popular? That is, the main topic here. And probably all those topics I listed are some of the reason. Now, I think they're the most popular. Well, let me back that up. I think they're so popular, and we know they're one of the most sold fish in the world. Like, there's actually trade publications that track fish that are sold worldwide, or bred and sold, right? Some of the highest ones are angelfish, goldfish, guppies, and depending on the year or decade, there'll be new king and queens, like, oh, guppies are number 1 right now, oh, angels are. And, I would say right now we're in a downward trend for guppies, and that's just, they're not dominating number 1 necessarily. Things like glowfish introduced into the market kind of took some of that away, at least in the U.S. So, still very high up there, though. Let's not, beat around the bush there. They're still one of the most sold fish in the world. But why? Why is it that on a worldwide level, we as hobbyists all, well, not everyone, but for the most part, see some value in guppies, whether you're feeding it to another fish, whether it's your first fish when you're 5 years old, whether you're 36 and now want a fish room dedicated to guppies or always have had a dedicated fish room to guppies. There's something there. And I think it's, one, you can get in kind of cheap. I don't think you have to spend a whole lot of money to start enjoying guppies. Some people will enjoy just a feeder guppy, and a feeder guppy is mostly wild-caught coloration, a lot of silver and just specks of color in there, typically very, very hardy, and will still reproduce, all the way towards, we're going to spend $500 for a trio of guppies because someone's worked very long and hard on them, and now they look amazing, and I want to own that flavor, right? So it covers that spectrum of hardcore advanced hobbyists, and maybe you're entering the competitions and that kind of stuff and going to shows. Like, I've been kind of geeking out watching the show unfold. Where is it right now? There's one in Poland and there's another one going on, and I was asking if I was going to go, but I have to go. I'm in Peru at the same time, so couldn't go. But at that high level, it's even fun to see what people can create. And here in the thumbnail, of this video, people were asking, can you mix fancy guppies with wild caught guppies? And the answer is yes. When you do that, you get something similar to the thumbnail where it's got some weird color pattern, but it's got a bigger dorsal fin, and then it's starting to get some extended rays on the tail fin. And that's where like the rubra guppy, gin rubra, and all that kind of stuff came from. Is we took these highly evolved strains and then we mixed in these crazy wild genetics, and what you get out of it is like, hey, that looks cool, right? And so I think there's always a lure of that, for all the types of guppies we have right now, give it 5 years, we'll have all new types, right? So there is also heirloom strains, so stuff that goes back 30, 40 years at this point, and they're not exactly the coolest thing you've seen, but there's something to be said like, wow, that's still cool. I haven't seen anything like that today, right? So like maybe we don't need to own a 40-year-old car because new cars are better technology. And maybe we like older cars and we appreciate it for what it is, but we still know that older car is clearly like inferior to the new car. That being said, we might still collect them and we like them, and people still trade them and sell them and all that kind of stuff. So that's right, I have my Yeti Aquarium Co-op Special Edition that Randy got me for my birthday. So yes, being that we can cater to a lot of different styles with guppies, that invariably leads to sales. And people in general, maybe they go to a store and they're going to buy 6 neon tetras. Well, when it comes to guppies, you kind of get that, like, I'm only going to eat 5 potato chips syndrome, where you're like, well, maybe just another couple. Okay, one more handful, and then close up the bag. All right, just a few more. Oh, and then pretty soon you've eaten the whole bag. Kind of the same thing happened with guppies of like, I'm going to buy 2 or 3. And then the next trip you're like, oh man, yes, 4 more. And then pretty soon you're like, oh, it's a guppy tank. I'll take those 5. I don't have those colors yet. And then pretty soon you're like, oh man, look at this pair. I've never seen them like that before. I'm going to put this in this other tank. And you kind of just keep going down until you kind of own them all, right? So that typically doesn't happen with other fish. Other fish, maybe African cichlids, that happens a little bit, but tetras, you're not so much one of every type. It's more like, oh, I got a couple groups, they're doing their thing. Now I want some rams, and I want some angels, and I want some top dwellers, and I want corridoras. Like you fan out. Where a guppy connoisseur can have 20 tanks, and it's nothing but guppies, and they're satisfied with all of them. It's kind of a weird phenomenon there. So I do want to say welcome to the new members. At least while this chat's been going, we have Peplin Creek Aquatics and Waith. I can't pronounce that correctly, but thank you. We're trying to hit. I think we're about 14 subscribers away from like the next threshold of like, hey YouTube, I done did it. Now what? And so that'll be good. I have another meeting with them on Friday, and somehow my channel is all messed up because the check mark is gone again. That little check mark that says like, oh, it's verified that it's Aquarium Co-op. It went away 2 weeks ago, then they brought it back. Now it's away again. Who knows what's going on? My channel is a little crazy. So, all right. So they're sellable. We've established that. They're sellable in that, people are going to buy them a lot of the time at a store, right? So that kind of means they're going to be breedable. And what I mean by that is for profit. I've got videos and series on breeding fish for profit. Guppies are a part of that. I've got a lot of you guys out there that have emailed us and told us your story about how you're making, I think one guy that's been emailing us and kind of updating us time after time is up to almost $1,000 a month he's making off breeding, guppies. And from there, it usually expands to like a couple other species of fish, but that is a starting point, and it's because guppies are a live bearer. So if we're new to guppies or new to fish, that means they give birth to a live fish, just like a human would give birth to a live baby. They don't, like a normal fish, or I shouldn't say normal fish because guppies are a normal fish, but other types of fish might lay eggs, and then those eggs have to hatch, and then we have a live fish. Well, in that process, when we go and we lay the eggs somewhere, if someone else comes along and eats them, we don't get any babies. But if they just come out of the fish as a live baby, now they can help fend for themselves. Like, oh no, here comes this. I better start running away. And even if they, run away pretty slowly, they might have a chance of getting away, even though it's still likely they get eaten. So, but yes, very breedable in that if you have males and females together, they will typically make more. Now, whether you see more or not, that's going to come down to how have you set up an aquarium for this. If it's, like in this 800 gallon back here, no guppies are going to make it. There's things going against it. So one, goldfish would eat the babies because any fish will eat a fish that fits in its mouth. So there's like one problem right there. Two, we have an overflow. So a big sump down below, water goes down, all those babies kind of zing, go down to the bottom. So that's another thing kind of preying on them. And then even adult guppies would do it because there's nowhere for those babies to hide at all, right? And you can get in this situation where you're putting food in, but if everyone has to come to the same spot to eat, and then instead of eating that food, I just eat you, that's a problem, right? So if we have a lot to cover, then we can spread food around, we can start raising some of those babies. There are other methods like removing pregnant females into another tank, letting the babies come out, and removing the mother back to the main tank. But that can be fairly stressful. But breeding guppies, I think the world record currently, or at least, maybe it's not world record, let me back that up. The American Live Bear Association record, I think, is somewhere around 419 babies from one female at one time. Right? Whereas now, the way we breed guppies, we don't breed necessarily for big batches. So like when I was over at Dean's, and you'll see this coming up in some videos, he pulled a female aside and I had a few more than 50 fry, which was good. That was a bigger drop than he's used to. So that was a good thing for him. But in general, we keep our tanks heated kind of 24/7, year-round. And so fish are kind of cranking out babies every 30 days, roughly. They have babies every 28 to 35 days, somewhere in there for the most part. And they're doing that like clockwork, right? Well, back in the day, maybe 20, 30 years ago, it was much more common for us to keep guppies like we would a betta. And what I mean by that is we keep them at room temperature. So maybe half the year, it's relatively cold in your house comparative to what they like. And so maybe they're not giving birth between September and March. So that way they're building up all this fat, they're still eating, and they're just getting to be a bigger guppy. Naturally, when, let's say, April rolls around, they have their first spawn, boom, here's 150 of these things, as opposed to only 30 to 50 every month, right? So it's going to be hard to do that unless we break some of our molds. And that's why I've done some videos on, like, maybe you don't need a heater in your aquarium. Let the temperature flux like it would in nature. There's some benefits to that. Definitely we see benefits to things like angelfish when we do that. And guppies, kind of the same way. So, yeah. All right. So, by them being breedable and them being sellable, typically there's some money to be made. And it could be as cheap as you're getting 10 cents for the ugliest guppy you've ever seen because the store will give you 10 cents credit. They'll sell it at 20 cents or 25 cents to a customer, and they'll feed it to their big, aggressive goldfish or whatever they're going to feed it to. So you might be making little amounts of credit there. Now, it's relative, right? So if you make 50 babies and they raise up and they're this big, and you bring those in and you get, 10 cents each, you're not making a whole lot. You're getting like, oh, I got food. That might be enough food to have raised them, right? But you can imagine, let's say you've raised something better than just a feeder, and now it might be just the assorted fancy guppy. And what's that? That is a guppy that, when it gives birth, a bunch of different types of guppies comes out. You buy it at the store, and it's like every color in the rainbow, different patterns, and they all from kind of breeding and living together. That's the assorted fancy guppy. Now there, you might get 50 cents each or $1 each, right? And so those same 50, now you're looking at going, wait, I'm getting $25 to $50 when I bring these in. Usually you got to get them a little bigger, so there is some more work there. But you could see like, okay, that if I bring in fish, I'm getting $50. That's buying fish food and other fish. And maybe at some point, oh, maybe it's just cash, right? So then you can go up another level and you start going, well, what if I start breeding fish where these guppies sell for $20 a pair? Well, wholesale, you might be getting $5, $8, $10 per pair, right? Those same 50 fish, all of a sudden we're talking, maybe it's $500, right? And really, then you've got like a business on your hands of like, dang, okay, $500, like I should do this more, right? Maybe I do more different types. And then you can get into very high level breeding, and that might be where pairs and trios and that kind of stuff are going for hundreds of dollars. Maybe you're inventing the strain or something like that, or it's just very scarce. And obviously there's a lot of money to be made there. And yeah, there's some tactics that you could sell very few at a very high price. Or what we like to do is we, like the guppies we brought back from Vienna, we're hoping to make a whole ton of them and then let them all go at like $30 or less a pair so that lots of people can enjoy them, instead of going, okay, well, it cost us $500 or 500 euros for these. Let's sell them at 100 euros. Instead, we can go, well, let's just breed up a ton and we'll release them to everyone. Everyone can enjoy these at a much more palatable price. And then like the following year, they probably drop to $20. And then for high-end strains, usually it becomes not worth it to the breeder, much less than being retailed out at $20 per. Because there's usually some other strain you could breed, or maybe you just don't care that much. If there's not a lot of money on the table, you're like, maybe I'll just enjoy them, I'll give them away, that kind of stuff. For the person that's doing it as a business, right? As a hobbyist, still totally worth it. So, let's see here. I'm going to jump in and grab maybe a super chat or that kind of stuff, and then we'll chime back more in on topics. Looks like the only super chat we've got is, hey Corey, I'm the golf guy in New York. Can't stay for the live stream, but I'll catch the replay. Because of you, I have a plated guppy tank with snails and shrimps and a betta. Nice. So thank you for the $10 super chat, Michael. The other thing I would point out there is sometimes people get too many guppies, and maybe you don't have a store. Maybe you've only got a Petco or PetSmart local to you, and they won't take any fish in, and there's not enough hobbyists. You're making more fish than they can handle. In that tank, you might be making a lot of babies, but the betta is a predator, and it will go and kind of hunt and eat some of those babies and kind of keep population more in check. Some people were talking earlier in the chat and said, my betta won't eat them, and what else could I try? Another great suggestion, which I've suggested in the past as well, is a dwarf frog. Dwarf frogs got a big mouth. They don't eat that many. The goal usually is not to eradicate your entire population. It's to make sure it doesn't get way out of control. So you want something that's a predator, but not crazy efficient at it. You don't want just like, trying to think of like a gar in there and just like, yep, overnight we are out of guppies. Like that's not usually the goal for people either. They want just like, well, at any one point I want 50 in this tank. I can't have 100 though. Like it's got to stay within reason. So yeah, good point there about the betta. Also have a new member, Iron City Rob. Thank you very much. I will try and post some pictures and possibly some quick videos from Peru. Coverage is obviously spotty, and it's $10 per 500 megabytes. So, a 1 minute video can be 500 megabytes a lot of times, and so it gets real expensive. You're like, oh, here's a 5 minute video. Like, dang, it costs $50 just to upload. And you got to keep hitting a button to like re-up on the stuff. So, but I will try to provide some little behind the scenes snippets. And don't worry, I'm there to film for actual videos for everyone for free. So, all right. Let's hop to the next little topic. And still, why are they very popular? And that, I think, is because they do really well in hard water. And they're still small. So what do I mean by that? So obviously there's a lot of fish in the world that can live in hard water. There's a lot that live in soft water. Basically how much calcium and minerals are in that water. Now, a lot of the country has very hard water, which these fish love, right? Where if you live where I live, we have soft water and they hate it. That's why in the tubs you see me putting all this crushed coral and stuff in there. Crushed coral mixed in here, got it in the sump. Trying to make the water higher pH, higher hardness, all of that kind of stuff. one of the things I actually use all the time, which I guess this is I've been struggling lately, you know, before we go too much deeper into guppies, I've been struggling lately with how do I remain 100% transparent with everyone about, it's not sponsorship, because like the product I'm going to talk about, I'm not sponsored, but I guess advertising? You know, I see a lot of YouTubers, and I clearly, so, okay, let me back up. This is like that rant, right? Like, so if I see a company reach out to me and they go, hey, do you want product X, Y, and Z for free? All you got to do is show it on a video. And then I go, nah, you know, I'm not really into that. I only want to show products I believe in and that kind of stuff. And then I watch 5 other YouTubers then put in their videos products X, Y, and Z, and they're not being 100% transparent like, we got this for free. I need to disclose that. I need to say those kind of things. So I've been extra leery about talking about products because for the most part, everything I do is a giant sales pitch, right? Because I own a store that sells products. And so even in every description it says, and this is 100% true, I'm an employee of Aquarium Co-op. I also own Aquarium Co-op, but legally I am an employee of a corporation type of thing. And I try and disclose that as much as I can. I feel like it's very apparent, but if you had never seen Aquarium Co-op before, maybe you don't know I own a store and that kind of stuff. And so I want you guys to know that if we're launching our own product, you know, it's obviously sponsored by Aquarium Co-op and it's obviously a sales pitch. Or I should say, should be obvious. But like this from last week's stream, these Vibrobites, I get no kickback at all in any way from Hikari. Like at all. Like not even dinner if I show up to an event and I'm like, cool, I sell a lot of your product. All they say is thank you, which is great, right? But I need you guys to know that I don't get paid. I actually like this. So that way you know that for the most part, I just show you products that I really genuinely like, even when other people go, I don't like Vibrobites. But that leads me to, you know, wanting to show you some products. So like, I want to talk about Wonder Shells a little bit because I feel like people don't necessarily understand all the relationship there. So let me go to the website. Is it broken? Oh no, it's broken. Well, that's not going to work. Let me see if I can fix that like on the fly here. It won't even let me click on it without looking bad. So, well, if you were to go, but I've got to fix it. My show, it doesn't depend on it, but I was really going to look at a white screen and we'll see if I can not screw this up somehow. That's not good. How do I fix this? Because I wanted to show a specific browser window and it's not. Why must you taunt me? Oh wait, right here. Maybe this will do it. And let me go to settings here. Yeah, it's the right thing. Why is it not doing it? Right there. Maybe it's like way too zoomed in. I don't know. Why is there always got to be a random hiccup? I'm in. Let me just make sure. Yep, I'm in there. And it is. All right, well, I'm just going to talk to you. Wonder Shells, which apparently I can't even show you. That's how good of a salesman I am. They are basically a calcium block that add a lot of calcium to the water. They add a few other little things. They got the world's worst packaging. And we have a hard time keeping them in stock. But they are really cool and good. And I really like that product for guppies. I like them for shrimp. I like it for all live bears in general. And that makes water harder. So if you have softer water, that is a great thing. I've got softer water. I use them all the time. Crushed coral, which a lot of people use, will raise pH and the buffering capacity, but not so much the hardness. It does change hardness a little bit, but not a ton. And so, you know, I was going to show you that, but the one thing I didn't get, there's nothing worse than when technology fails you and it works every other time. Like, because I was going to take you guys shopping on Aquabid and Twin City Guppies and point out things I look for, but I have no way to diagnose this without it just being a train wreck. So we'll have to save that for another show. So I apologize. So I was going to take you shopping there and then show you like what I look for when I'm looking for guppies. Because as a guy that's ordered, you know, a lot of guppies off Aquabid and other websites, I know what I'm looking for. So, yeah. All right. Well, being that they're good in hard water, and they also stay small. And what I wanted to bring up about that is a lot of the small fish are tetras and danios and rasboras and all that, and they kind of like softer water. Guppies, on the other hand, still a 2-inch fish, but loves hard water. You know, African cichlids love hard water, but they're not a 2-inch fish for the most part, right? So I think that's why it does really well, especially in other countries. A lot of other countries, let's say, have harder water because they might be getting some in from the ocean. They got to treat it, that kind of stuff, and it makes it really easy. So instead of fighting against your water parameters, you can have something that really thrives in there and just does well. And I say all the time, I would like to have hard water that has a little bit of nitrogen in it. I would be able to keep plants growing easier and just have a good old time. So, but whatever you don't have is what you want, and what you have is what you don't want when it comes to fish. So, all right, we had another super chat from James Holbrook sneak in for a couple of bucks, and Jacek, Jacek? I want to say Jack at the beginning, but Jacek T maybe? Maybe that's became a member, thank you. And Ginger Graves, longtime supporter. Super cool to meet you at the AGA convention. Donated 20 bucks for the Peru live stream fund. All right, I will see what I can do. With that 20 bucks, I will try to make some crazy little thing happen in Peru. Even if it's just from like a hotel or the market, you know, out on the boat in the jungle, I have no idea reception. Like it might be like, oh, it's 1 megabyte per second. That can't handle a live stream, but I will do what I can. She does have a question, though. My Moore's goldfish has a cloudy eye for a couple of months. Had meds, he eats, he swims, he doesn't act sick, and I've decided it's maybe a cataract. Should I retreat with anything? So it sounds like the fish is doing really well except for the cloudy eye. And being a black Moor, I do find they are more prone to cataracts, or at least an eye that doesn't seem to be working that well. I personally don't know that I would go with more meds. I think I would possibly, if you had another aquarium, like a QT tank, which, if I could have everyone have a QT tank, life would be a lot easier. But if you had a QT tank somewhere, which stands for quarantine tank, put it in there and give it a tablespoon of salt per gallon. Let it sit in there for like a month. Feed it, let it just live its life. If it doesn't get better then, you've pretty much 100% ruled out bacterial and fungal infections, and you will know it's a cataract. Short of taking it to a vet and spending way more money to figure that out, then you can just go, hey, you know, like my dog, very, very old, Sassy, has cataracts, is basically blind at this point, and you just go, oh, well, yep, we'll try to make life as easy as we can, and, comfort her. So that's all you can really do for that goldfish as well. All right, so back to guppies. Another reason I think they're popular and I love them is they are like little algae eaters. So most live bearers are opportunistic eaters. They'll eat whatever they can, whether it's off the bottom of your aquarium, a little bit of algae here and there, the food you put in, some babies. Like they just like to nibble. And when you have a voracious colony of guppies in a tank, you can usually like take something and put it in there, and they'll just go to town picking at it. And they'll eat, what I do like is they'll eat things like planaria, they'll eat copepods, they'll eat little bits of algae. In general, they're like tiny little cleaner fish, always doing a little bit of work for you. And when you have 1 billion of their little mouths, they tend to do a pretty good job. So they don't eat every type of algae. They don't fix everything. In fact, a lot of times you'll see tons of algae in a guppy tank because we're feeding so much, but they can be very efficient at it. So I like having them. I like having a library in general, but guppies are a good time. All right, genetics. This is the one I always gloss over. One, I do not know Guppy genetics like the back of my hand. Definitely don't. What I can teach you is that people are super chatting Peru money. Well, thank you. What I can teach you is, in general, it takes more work than we think for genetics. So let's say we take a red one and a blue one, and we're thinking that makes purple. We breed them together, and not a single baby comes out purple. And we go, oh, well, that didn't work. The first thing to know is, usually with genetics, and there's exceptions to this, there's genes that can't possibly repeat, there's genes that when put together are lethal, there's a bunch of combinations. But in general, you take the blue one, you take the red one, you breed them together, none come out purple. That is to be expected. If you were to take those babies and raise up, maybe you've raised those up, you've got blue ones, you've got red ones, you've got black ones, you've got some mottled color ones, you've got snake skins, you've got all this stuff in there. Now if you take some of those, let's say blue and red ones from those babies, and you breed those together, you get a rainbow coming out again. You might get like, ooh, we have 10 of them that are kind of purpley color now, right? So then you take those ones. So you take those ones and you breed those together. And again, they come out, not a single purple one. You're going, what? Okay, well, you take those ones together, you breed them, you're like, wait, half of them or 75% are now purple. I'm on to something. But you find out, their tail looks terrible, their dorsal fin looks terrible. Oh no, what am I going to do? Well, if you take the parents and you breed it back, maybe you'll get some purple with some of the genes you want. Maybe that's not the best. Or if you had separated out some of those other guppies you made with these purple ones into other tanks, you can go, ooh, if I cross this one with that one, do the genetics, okay, it'll come out with still more purple, and we can take the tail I like from that one, even though it's like, this guppy's yellow, it's got the tail you want, it also carries the genes you want to make the purple guppy. So you take that gene, you got the tail you want, and you mix it with the purple guppy, and instead of getting 50 or 60% purple, now you got 20% purple, but 10% of those have the tail you want. So then you separate those into another tank, right? And you keep working with it until you get to where you want to go. And on average, this is going to take 7+ tanks, and it might take you 10 to 20 generations to make a new guppy. This is why they can be so expensive when they're brand new. Someone put a lot of time and work into it. So genetics can get very complicated and they can be very frustrating. And we'll talk about some ways to keep your guppies looking good and maybe getting a little better with little effort. So Super Chat's been rolling in through the door. Whoa. All right, so we've got some Super Chats from James Holbrook. I want to add to the Peru fund and even sneak in a couple of tacos. Ooh. Even if it's not Tuesday, be careful and have fun. Your aquarium staff did wonderful with my order received today. I always love to hear that. And yes, I plan to try all the things in Peru. It's on my list to hopefully get to try guinea pig. I didn't get to try it last time. I have no idea if I'll get to try it this time. But if it's like at the street fair that we plan a couple extra days after the collecting in Peru to go and experience the street fairs and that kind of stuff, because there's some other things I want to try, like Goldie Pleco soup. If that was available somewhere and like people were already eating it, I would try it just for the novelty factor. So want to get some of that in on the footage for you guys. Ron and David Gilkinson, they're not both Gilkinsons, but Ron and David both donated money, $30 from Ron and $10 from David for the live stream fund. Well, I will do absolutely everything I can. I don't want to make a promise and say a live stream will happen, because I also don't want to spend a bunch of money and be like, oh man, I think Corey's on the screen. It's only 2 pixels. There's just brown and lighter brown. So if it's any reasonable quality at all, we will make it happen. Dean, I, and Randy, we will make it happen. So, and SB in with $5. Peru live stream. Hope the technology works. Love Wonder Shells, but yeah, the packaging. LOL. Yes, there is something left to be desired with that packaging. So, ooh. Miley says, Guppies are the village idiots of any fish I know. They're so silly. Yes. is wacky, and when you have a million of them, there's always one doing something weird. Like, what is that thing doing? And they're kind of dopey in that, like, your favorite dog is kind of dopey. Like, oh, I just love everyone. I eat and I play and I'm a good dog. I feel like Guppies are the same way. They don't really, for the most part, very few of them get aggressive. Very few, are just a problem. That being said, you can have horrible problems if they get sick. Like, that's no fun, right? So we'll talk about diseases and that kind of stuff when we get to, like, why are they weaker and all that. Still rolling in, Ken B with their guinea pig taco. And, Quiet Myth has a question. New viewer here, making a 5-gallon community tank. It's got hard 7.4 pH. All right? Lightly planted with a betta and 3 cherry shrimp. How much more room do I have left? Well, is it planted? Did I see that? Yes, lightly planted. Test your water parameters. They probably look spot on. If they do, you've got some room physically. Now, if we look at it, you've got a betta in there, kind of doing its thing, and you've got some shrimp. Maybe you could try some like pygmy corridoras. Maybe you could try some Brigitae rasboras. Basically other little nano fish. But take it slow and realize you got to feed them somehow. And what I mean by that is, like, you might be feeding floating pellets to that betta right now, but maybe those midwater fish, they're going to need cyclops, or those bottom dwellers are going to need bottom food, which they might share it with the shrimp, right? But in general, I think you can do a little bit more, but I feel like this is the point when you're like, hey, how do I get more in this 5-gallon? Maybe you just upgrade to like a 10 or a 20-gallon and start really going whole hog with this hobby. But if you're limited to that 5-gallon, like at a workstation at work or something like that, then you start pushing the bounds like, what else could I do, All right. Ooh, Jimmy's in the house. So Lizzie's guppies got fungus on their butt, tried erythromycin, but they're slowly dropping one by one. What do? Yes, so we started talking about diseases. One of the likely culprits for disease on guppies is them not being happy. It's as simple as that. And then you might go, well, what? Why aren't they happy? Ooh, that is hard. So it could be maybe you don't have enough pH. Could be maybe you don't have enough hardness. Could be too cramped, right? Could be poor food. Could be that they were raised in brackish water and we just put them in non-brackish water. So usually disease breaks out when conditions are compromised for almost any animal, really. So with guppies, a lot of times we have a bunch of them, or we put them in planted tanks, and we don't realize that the plants have absorbed all the calcium, right? And so then we have not very hard water. Even though we're doing water changes, the plants are soaking it up, or all the babies, are utilizing it. It's just not enough. And then we get this chronic illness, and we're using meds, right, to cure it. But same thing, if I take an antibiotic, but I'm constantly, let's say I gouge my arm open and it's infected. If I take antibiotics, but I constantly keep just putting it into mud and just, rubbing it on anything that's coated in bacteria, it's going to be an ongoing problem forever. We have to keep it clean and the antibiotics will work. Same thing. If I'm on antibiotics and I'm trying to heal a wound, but I'm working 14-hour days digging ditches, my body is so exhausted, it doesn't have enough energy left to really focus on healing the wound. That's very common in guppies. So, goldfish, one of my favorite remedies for guppies is salt. Now, in a planted tank, I'm assuming that's planted, plants and salt don't mix. That does suck. But you can start with light amounts. And what's a light amount, you might say? Like a teaspoon, not tablespoon, teaspoon per 20 gallons. Now, the actual NaCl, the salt there, it's unregistered. You can't even register it on a hydrometer, right? But the trick, the key right here, the secret is you hit that like button, and then I'll tell you. All right, you got the like button triggered? All right. The secret is use marine salt. So the salt we would put in a saltwater aquarium is loaded with minerals. It's almost like taking a vitamin, right? Because you look at the contents, which if my stupid website plugin was working, I could show you that there's like a list of minerals in saltwater salt that's a mile long, right? It naturally raises pH, it naturally buffers the water, it naturally has calcium, magnesium, all the hardness stuff we want in it. And in that small little dose, little teaspoon per 20 gallons, we really add to our planet tanks. One, we're adding all those minerals the plants want, but two, we're adding all those minerals that might make our guppies happier again. Now, in a perfect world, you've got a quarantine tank, and we catch all these guppies, we put them over there, and we put 1 tablespoon per 2 gallons of water, of salt, normal salt, like aquarium salt, and that will fight it off too. But in that, surgical strike, when you got to get these better in this planet tank, I like to use a little bit of salt. Now, I will say, I wonder if I can find it in time. If I can find it in under 60 seconds, I will talk about it. If I cannot, I will not. So this is, let me start it by, in no way am I paid or sponsored to talk about this product. In fact, I don't even sell it yet. I'm currently testing it for myself, but let me go find it, if I can find it. All right, found it. So this product is a product that I'm testing, and I've modified it, if you will. I put a squirt top on it. That was the first thing I do. And this is Fritz. So this is a product I wanted to make. I wanted to basically make, how can we harden water in a meaningful way for a planted aquarium and for live bearers? That was my goal. And through talking with like Fritz and just other companies, they're like, well, we have liquid salt water. And I was like, okay. So this quick change thing, which has a billion of small fine prints that mean nothing to us in the freshwater world, right? The goal, I think, if we were to use this is shake well and add, 16 ounces. How many ounces is it? It's only 16 ounces, right? Well, this is clearly not right. The package here is not right. So, Sean, if you're listening at Fritz, this is not good. So, maybe this might be a test for me. I don't know if they made this test for me, but, because right here it says, I don't know if it'll focus, 1 gallon. I got news, either I got the biggest head on the planet, or this isn't a gallon. It does make 9 gallons though. So, the goal would be take 16 ounces, which I believe this to be a 16-ounce bottle, and that will make 1 gallon of ready-to-use salt water. All right? So clearly, we don't need to know that. What we want to know is, well, if I put a couple of milliliters in there, what does it do to the water chemistry? And that's what I've been playing with lately, because it was something I played with, now it would have been like 10 years ago. I was playing in my first fish room, planet tanks, wanted to supplement the hardness and minerals for plants, and I believe this is going to be a good way to do it. That being said, a lot of testing has to go on, because how much is coming out of this pump? How much do we have to shake it? How much is good for your tank? With how many water changes? How fast is it used up? There's more research to be done on my end before I can turn this loose and go, hey guys, go buy Fritz Quick Change and dose it at this level. But it is something I'm playing with in the super backdrop. So for instance, it says right here, Quick Change will raise the salinity at the following rates. 1 ounce, which is a teaspoon, right? If you do a teaspoon per gallon, raises it to 0.062. That's not much. And we're only going to do 1 teaspoon per 20 gallons. So, yeah. But something I'm playing with. that's the way I would start attacking guppy illness, is with a little bit of salt, a little bit of minerals, and go from there. They lead a hard life sometimes. So, all right, let me get this product out of the way. This is just blocking my chats. I'm just laughing from Steven Slitherland. 2-bit Corey Peru live stream. That's right. Oh, man. Carrie Pitt, long time no talk in the comment section. Guppies are optimistic. Could be, yes. I have been sick for 2 years. Days I am affected by depression. I go down and watch my guppies. I just love the optimism. Yeah, they're kind of always pushing forward. They're always making new babies. Even if they're, down and someone eats their babies, they make more. Like their whole goal in life is just make more, do better. So, and I gotta be honest, that's one of the aspects I love. I love that whenever I see new, fresh babies, whether it's guppies, whether it's, any type of fish, I'm always like, yeah, that's awesome. All right. Just a little bit of like, all right. Even if there's a bunch of other babies in there, the fresh batch, I'm like, yeah, still going good, and just brings a little bit of highlight to my fish keeping career, because it can be pretty stressful when everything you do with fish is always in front of the camera. And so it's nice to get these little moments. Like my absolute favorite moments are when I'm outside around a pond and I see some little babies that I wasn't aware of. That's my absolute joy, because in an aquarium, you kind of, I see them, they're there, they're doing their thing. But in a pond, sometimes it sneaks up on you. So, yeah. All right, we got some new members here from Gunner's Fish Room. And then we've got some super chats. Shrimp-friendly Med Trio. The Med Trio is shrimp-friendly. Yep, don't worry about that, Alex. At least all the shrimp I've ever treated, done okay. I'm sure if you do super long, prolonged use, way too much, that kind of stuff would be bad, but in normal, regular dosing, it's good. So, Night Owl says, thanks for the advice, no problem. Keith M says, sponge filter versus box. I think I know which you prefer, but can you do some comparison, especially for instant cycling of tanks? If you go back into the old daily doses and the old fish room, I ran box filters in the store and at home for tests. And unanimously between myself and the employees, we all agreed that we preferred sponge filters over the box filter. Now, Greg Sage really loves box filters in his fish room, and his style works for him. And I can see his logic. That's why I tried it, and it did not work well for us. So mostly it was you become a slave, and he's a slave to those box filters, where you're not necessarily a slave to the sponge filter. Now, a box filter gets your tank cleaner, but you also got to clean it all the time. So it's one of those catch-22s of like, well, I might want to enjoy my aquarium too. So, all right. Let me hop back into the list, because we've got more to go, and we're almost an hour into this thing. So why are guppies weaker? This is a good transition from sick guppies to why are they weaker. All right. They are weaker. Well, that's not true. I shouldn't say they are weaker. I should say why I think they're weaker. Back in the day, before my time, before I kept guppies, they were a lot more popular. They were in, People magazine, all that kind of stuff. They get articles written about them. And because there weren't that many colorful strains yet, a lot of people were working on them. And because of that, names would get associated with them. So some of the greats like Luke Roebuck, Stan Schubel, there's probably 40 others I can't remember off the top of my head. But these were fish breeders that would do well at competitions, and their name would, do you have a Larry blah blah blah's Purple Moscow? Which would be different from someone else's Purple Moscow because Larry's been working on it and his dorsal's just the best, blah blah blah, right? Well, when all those names got associated with those fish, that also came with some problems. If you sold those fish, let's say you sold them to someone, and you go, yeah, they're $75 for a trio, and then they die or they get sick, right? Now all of a sudden, oh, Larry blah blah blah's fish, yeah, they always get sick. They're not good fish. They're not strong. They're not robust, right? So the breeders naturally, not only did they breed for color, but they also bred for vigor. Like, how good was this fish? Was it a big body? Was it super healthy, right? And there were breeders that even would get a big group of fish, then give them ick and let them die back. And the ones that survived, like the last 10%, were naturally more resistant to ick. Then they would do that for velvet. Then they would do it for cold temperatures. Then they would do it for hot temperatures. Then they would do it for overcrowding. Then they would do it. And so you'd end up with a fish that could just shake off almost anything within reason, right? And so then when you were doing that for all your fish, you'd be known as like, yeah, Aquarium Co-op's fish, just bulletproof, super good, hardy. They've got all these great traits. They look good. And that's why I'll spend $75 with Aquarium Co-op instead of Larry Blah Blah's fish, right? But that's kind of gone by the wayside now. Now we have very few people. I'm trying to think if I can even think of a single person that I actually think has invented a fish. Now, in the chat, I'm sure some of you will go, hey, what about L.R. Bretts? He made rainbow endlers. I'm like, that's a very slight mutation compared to something else, right? And what I'm saying is, I don't know if I know the name. And the difference is, 40 years ago, there would have been a bunch of like household names of like, oh, these great people are making great guppies. I don't feel like we have that going on right now. So with that part missing, I feel like we're missing the, what do I want to call it? Accountability, right? So now if a guppy is just like super purple Moscow lace Thailand bred guppy, for the most part, no one's reputation's on the line, and so if they're not that hardy, people will buy other ones, right? And I think that became part of the problem. So I do believe fish are weaker. It used to be, and you can see this when you start looking at old books and that kind of stuff, when you read about what's a good way to set up guppies, it would be, in general, just like give it a tank, maybe give it some plants, but give it some cover, and then maybe use a heater if you want, but most times they weren't. And you would have kids that are 5 years old being very successful with guppies. Now, guppies are quite hard because they're being raised in mass populations. And I guess that's a big difference too. 40 years ago, fewer fish farms, and definitely of the fancy guppies, they weren't necessarily in the farms. So they were being taken care of by local hobbyists, right? Now, mass-produced, million fish. There's a reason we call it the million fish. It makes millions and millions and millions of them. They breed, they breed, they breed. When we do that, naturally we make things weaker. So we can imagine a farm that makes 5 million guppies a year versus a breeder who makes 5,000 guppies a year. Which one's probably getting a higher level of care per guppy? Probably the 5,000. And that usually led to a more expensive guppy. It also led to a more healthy guppy. So that breeder would go, oh, I need to get more money for it. Someone's willing to pay more money for it. At $75, my expectations are a lot higher than if it's mass-produced and it was $30. Just in general, that's the way the world works. So we've gone through that transition for a very long time. And I've talked about this a while ago on, I've done some of this like hardening up of guppies, that's what I call it, of you almost put it through extra cold temperatures, you put it through these extremes so that when someone gets it from me, it's relatively hardy. So, that's one of the reasons why I want to become an urban fish farmer, if you've watched the vlogs. And that's because outside of Aquarium Co-op and all that, I would love someday that there's like, oh man, Corey's been working with these guppies, I've got the Corey strain. Or like with half-beaks, the Celebi's half-beak that ever had the best red on it ever, James Langhammer. I'm going to remember that name forever, right? And it's because he worked on it for like 40 years. Like that fish transcends him. And that's something I want to do eventually because it's fun and I enjoy it. And that's the thing is like, a lot of these fish are taking 10, 20 years to make. It's not, oh, I got them last year, now I've bred them, I changed them a little bit, and now they're a thing. It's a long time. And that's what I want to do at some point. It doesn't really make you a lot of money, but it's something that you can go, yeah, I did that, and now the hobby has this because I dedicated my life or a big portion of it to doing it. So, yes, are guppies weaker? I believe they're weaker. Just the way inherently we've changed the way we make them. It's kind of, I believe fast food is worse for us now than it was 30 years ago or 40 years ago. Even in my lifetime, I'm only 36, but as a wee little, lad, when you go to the Taco Bell and you eat some tacos, the quality was infinitely higher than it is now. Like I would say, tacos back then were close to like making a taco at home quality. Now, I'm not even sure the lettuce is actually made out of vegetables anymore. It's bad. Artificial lettuce, let me tell you. All right. Kyle says, with a $10 super chat, by the way, hey, Corey, thanks for everything you do and providing quality service and excellent education. I try. That's all I can do is try. So thank you. Heather says, guppies in a betta sorority tank that's planted. You could have a Thunderdome on your hands. It might be a bloodbath. But if I was going to try a short-tailed guppy. So either like the feeder fish type of guppy, wild type, or like spade tail types. Anything with big, long, flowy fins, they're going to swim so slow compared to those guppy, or compared to the female bettas, that I think you're running into some problems. The other thing to think about is if you make the water hard enough for guppies, are the female bettas put out? Like you got to ride that line of like, okay, it's like 7 to 7.2 pH, moderate hardness at all times. If you go way too hard, that's a problem. If you go too soft, that's a problem. Same with pH. You got to just dial it in, keep it steady. So, yeah. All right, let me dig back in. No new members yet. That's all right. I wonder if I can update. How many more to pass the threshold we're looking for? 8 more. 8 more is the number. 8. 8 is what we need. All right, keep going. Care requirements, water parameters. Man, again, a natural transition. So in a perfect world, we're going to start with what is optimal for guppies, in my opinion, and then we're going to go towards the range. So optimally, like 7.8 pH, 300 to 400 parts per million hardness, like really hard water, lots of buffering capacity, obviously no ammonia, no nitrite, nitrates under 40 parts per million, right? And I would say temperature 78 to 80 if you're really trying to like crank some fish out. Now, what I keep them at more like 72 degrees because they live longer. They typically will gain more weight and get to be bigger in their lifetimes. My water is very soft, so I struggle to get it to like 7.2. Hardness, I struggle there because out of my tap, I have 25 parts per million. That's it. So I have to use wonder shells and that kind of stuff, and I hover around usually 100 to 120. Alkalinity hovers at about 40 for me using crushed coral. And so I would say you might be able to go a little bit lower than that, but not much. And you can definitely go higher, 8.5 pH, really, really hard water. But in those extremes, it's not nearly as good as being more towards the center for getting breeding and just overall health. So, yeah, I would say they can be very forgiving if you're in that zone. But they definitely don't hold up well to ammonia and nitrite. So, got to get that on point. Plant's one of the easiest way to combat that. There we go. We got Fernando stepping up and Wes Thompson. We need 6 more, people. 6 more. Do this. Someone teach their grandma how to sign up. Come on. Keeping lines pure. All right. That's a good idea. So we talked about 1 billion tanks to improve traits. Now let's talk about just keeping them pure. Well, if we only keep them by themselves, you would think that would remain pure, but likely it won't. So in the breeder world, if you will, we call a strain that has been set. Let me explain what that is. So let's say we made these purple guppies. You know, we took the blue ones, we took the red ones, and we worked with them, and now that they're set. If someone was to say they are a set strain, it means 90% or more when they give birth come out as the purple ones, and less than 10% are not. Right? That would be a set strain. So we need to keep that pure, right? Well, if we know we have a pair and they give birth to 100 babies, if 90 of them are purple and 10% are not, if we don't do anything, those ones that are not pure are also going to breed with the purple ones. And then the next batch that comes out, a little bit less, maybe only 80% are purple. And if we let that go, maybe the next batch that comes out, only 50% are purple, and we can revert back to this kaleidoscope of color. So it's our job. We have to intervene. And being purists, we go, ooh, that doesn't have the tail I like. Let me net you out, and you can go into this community aquarium. Ooh, you're red instead of purple. You gots to go. And you just keep removing the ones you don't like. Now that works for a pretty long time. If you keep removing deformities or things that aren't what you want, then you will keep that line relatively pure. You can run into a problem many generations in. A lot. More than most people ever run into, of they're now so inbred, and usually it takes more than 50 generations. They're now so inbred, they're getting like a majority of defects. Then you do what's called outcrossing. So you would be way down the rabbit hole, right? And then go, oh man, it's not looking so good. Then you hop on Aquabid or TwinCityGuppies.com, which they're probably in the chat hanging out, and you go and you find someone else got really nice purple guppies. And what you want to do is you want to take like, oh, let me take this boy from mine and your girl from over here, put those together. Take your girl and your boy and my girl, put those in a different pair. Let them breed, see what comes out. Usually that will strengthen up the bloodline. Now, at a farm scenario, they do the same thing. When I was in Israel, one of the farms actually, they outcross with wild genetics. But then that takes a lot more work to get them true again. So it's this weird, like, but they can do it on a massive scale. So it doesn't take them years and years. It takes them about a year to freshen up the stock. So because they can do it on that mass scale, they're at an advantage, I would say. All right. So keeping it pure, some people call it culling, so when you cull the fish, that can be what happens. But I would say it's also the way you can improve a line. So let's say you've got these purple guppies and they're breeding, and you're removing the, the blue ones out and the purple ones out, and that one's got a horrible tail and that one leaves out. But eventually you start going, wait a second, I really like the way that one looks. That one, the dorsal fin's this tall. It's amazing. Oh, and the tail, it's a nice round shape. I like that too. So let's say that was a boy that you really, really liked. What you could do is you could remove all the other boys and just make it so only that boy is breeding with the girls. Now, keep those other boys somewhere else, because if you lost that boy, you don't want to be like, oh no, I have to start over. What am I going to do? But that's also how you could breed for traits you want. Now, again, what do we know? We know that we take a fish, another fish, the first batch that comes out doesn't always look like the adults. So you might have to let those raise up. So you take all those fry out and you put them in another tank, you let those raise up. Then you find the best ones out of there. You breed them maybe back to dad or back to mom, or maybe you breed those pairs. You try and how you can make it better. You don't necessarily know what combinations are going to work. You don't know which genes in combination will be worse, and you got to play with it. And that's what can take a really long time is you breed a fish, you're at least 6 months out from breeding it, and then you're 6 months out from seeing what does it look like. So you just want to make one change. That's like a year's worth of work, and it might be a change for the worse. So that's where you see like, oh, I can see how it would take a long time to make these better, and that's why we've been working on it for 40 years of like the fish of 40 years ago, barely purple. Now really purple, but oh, maybe we want different fins now or something like that. All right, we've had a onslaught of new members. We've got Draco, Ryu, Lana Valenzuela? Yeah, Valenzuela. Jessica Taylor, Ron Davine, Kelly Bender, Michelle Bowers, and Bentley Pasco. Does that bring us to... Are we over the threshold? We're updating. Yes, we are! Well, thank you. Now I can bring that to the old YouTuber people and be like, what's up now, YouTube? What you got? Can I get my check mark back that you lost on accident? They're actually really nice people, so I don't talk that way to them. I mostly just go, hey, how's it look now? What can we do? All right, the last question I have on the topic list, which we will get to some in the chat, is the healthiest starter guppies. All right, so my thoughts are, how do we ensure success? Success is hard when you don't know the person, but in general, I think these are the best tips. If you can buy guppies that are local to your water. So what does that mean? That means your local fish store is breeding them, or the guy down the road's breeding them, or someone locally on Craigslist or Facebook or any OfferUp, anything like that. Someone local to you is breeding them. That's generally a leg up. After that, then it's kind of like, well, I think the best might be, and this is coming from a guy that owns a retail store, I think after that comes from somewhere like Twin City Guppies or Aquabid, somewhere where someone's breeding them at their home and then shipping them to you. I think that's the next best. And then after that comes walked into a random pet store and bought some, now I'm doing it. All right? So that's I would say private local breeder, then private breeder, then pet store, right? It's really nice when, like, I breed guppies and I own a pet store, and so it's private breeder, it goes to pet store. That works out great. But not everyone's got that. And we still buy a lot of guppies we have to bring in. So, but you'd want to ask. So from there, so closest to home is kind of the most beneficial. Then look at most diverse genetics. So when we talked about those purple guppies with the giant dorsal fin and the great tail that we love, and we had to breed and get there, those might not be the strongest fish. They might be the most purple fish with the biggest fins. In general, something that's kind of a mutt, let's say you have that local private breeder, and they're really trying to get a specific fish, and they keep taking out the blue ones and the red ones and the different tailed ones, and they keep just putting them in this other tank over here. Meanwhile, they got purple guppies here, they have yellow ones over here. So now you've got all kinds of stuff going to this community tank. And they're breeding up a storm, and they're just mixing all the genes. That's probably the guppies you want to start with. Something that's very diverse, something that should be relatively healthy, and has been bred locally to you. And then know that it's not even just guppies. Fish in general don't really settle into your water until you've got 2 generations in. So what does that mean? That means you bought some fish, whether it's from the breeder, whether it's from the store, whether it's from online. You've got those fish. That's generation 0. That's the start. They have babies. You raise those babies up. That's generation 1. Now you breed that generation, and they have babies. You raise that generation up. That's generation 2. When you get to that second generation, those guppies are really conditioned for the way you keep fish. Your water parameters, your water change schedule, the food type, the amount of cover you do. Because if you don't have a lot of cover, the ones that survive that are better at surviving that. In generation 2, they'll be even better. In generation 3, they'll be even better. In generation 4, because if they're not good at it, they got wiped out in generation 2, generation 1 already. So the longer they're in your water, the more adapted to the way you keep fish. Now, that might bring up some wheels turning in the old noggin there of like, wait a second. If I keep fish differently than the guy down the street, that also might prove some problems. Yes. So that's why we try to eliminate as many things as we can. It's likely their water will be similar, but maybe they do water changes every day and you do water changes once a month. Clearly different, right? Maybe they run UV sterilizers and you don't. Maybe they run their fish from 82 degrees, and you run yours at 74, right? So there's all these little variables, but the closer you can get, the better your odds are. Whereas, let's say we had a guppy that was bred in Thailand, and it was at 85 degrees, then it took a trip to Texas, and then from Texas, it took a trip to Washington. Now it's in my store, and your water is like mine, and it's 6.8 pH out of the tap, and no hardness, and no buffering capacity, and then you buffer it up a little bit. That's a far stretch from the original Thailand water parameters, and maybe you're only keeping it at 72 like me, right? So the closer we can get to your home water, the better. That's what you're striving for is, do I think this will be very close to what I'm already doing? That's the best. Focus on that for your starter guppies. So the other thing too, and I talk about this with other breeders, we're always on the lookout for guppies that have been neglected. So like Greg Sage, for one time he found a strain he liked of guppies, and the guy hadn't changed water in years. It was in his basement, and the guppies were just doing amazing. Well, he then took those fish home and bred them, and they were just so robust that they sold really well. Now, he didn't have YouTube as a platform back then, so he couldn't really convey like why would you buy Greg Sage's guppies other than he's an amazing breeder and his fish are great. Now we know that. But if you're just one website on the internet, how do they know that your guppies for $30 are so much better than someone else's guppies for $30 when they look the same? Because he couldn't really tell the story of like, I found these in someone's basement and they've been neglected. They were very genetically very strong and they're great. And that's why you should buy them instead of these ones, right? So, yeah, you do want, not that you want fish to be abused or anything like that. You want to see them be robust and hardy. And then you go, ooh, if I start working that and make it better, that's a great thing. All right. We've got a new member, Rich, welcome, and Nathan with a super chat. Setting up a new tank. I've tested the tap water at 8.4, the buffering capacity at 90, and the hardness at 179. Is my pH too high? Will fish adapt? Will Ultimate Water Conditioner make the water more alkaline? Can I use Wonder Shell? And they're asking about Machachi, Forktail, and Harlequin Rasboras. All right. That is a lot packed into that. So I'm gonna unpack that a bit. So your pH being at 8.4. Is that too high? Will fish adapt? Some fish will adapt, yes. Is it too high for some species? Yes. Right? So I couldn't say just like, will fish adapt? Some will and some won't. Like wild-caught bettas, probably never going to really thrive in that environment. But let's say Harlequin Rasboras bred in Florida would do okay. That being said, if you got, let's say Dean bred the Rasboras in a softer water, wouldn't do so hot, right? Will Ultimate Water Conditioner make the water more alkaline? Not in a noticeable amount. Like it just buffers a little bit. So I wouldn't even stress about that. Can I use Wonder Shells? You can. It would make the water more hard, but the question is, do you need it more hard? Right? I'm not with the species you've listed. I would say no. You probably don't need it more hard. Something like the Forktail Rainbow likes harder water. I need to make like a cheat sheet somehow. What does the internet need? This is how I do my business. I sit here and I go, how do I make this easier for people? Like, because I know, and a lot of times I'm trying to train, let's say my wife, a different employee, Candy, like the knowledge in my brain comes from, I've done this a million times. I've kept that fish. I've tried these combos. That's how I know it. So then I go, what is a simple system for me to make it easy for my employees who haven't done that? And I bet you if I think about it long enough, maybe I can write a blog article that maybe is a loose rule. If you were to look up the pH requirements for a fish, and that fish could go plus or minus 0.5 do I think that's true? Like with goldfish, usually they recommend 7.5 or higher. I think you can go to 8 and you can go to 7. That one works. I think you can do it with guppies. What about discus? Maybe discus doesn't work. Because if you recommend 6.5 and you go down to 6, maybe still a 6. And they can do it, you know, they can like breed and you can raise them up at 7. So that might be a thing. And I feel like I could probably identify like plus or minus 0.5 pH, plus or minus X amount of hardness, and plus or minus a temperature. If I could make that as like a flashcard, I think that would help a lot of hobbyists. So I'll think on that and see if I can't come up, and then I'll run. What I like to do with that kind of stuff is come up with a thing I think could be a rule, and then run through just lots and lots of different types of fish and go, which of those are breaking the rule? Like, oh, that wouldn't work. And then if it covers like 80% of fish, I think that works. Now, I realize that's exactly how 1 inch per gallon of fish gets started. That's how you can never do too many water changes. You can never have enough filtration. I realize that's how all those rules get started mantras. But possibly I could find a way to like plus or minus those, but also when in doubt, experiment, test, and know that on the edges of those, like at 7.5, they're going to be happier than at 8 or at 7, right? So try and keep it. And then there's also probably, like, you probably don't want to keep it at, like a goldfish, for instance, right? Goldfish is a good example. If they do the best at 74 for breeding and doing all that kind of stuff, at 79, they're a little bit stressed. Or I mean, okay, let me back that up. 7.9, they're a little bit stressed. No, that's not what I'm trying to say. I gotta get my thoughts in a row here. If they do really well at 74 degrees, and we took them to 79, that's a little bit of stress. If we take pH from 7.4 to 6.9, that's also stress. And those two stress factors, like we went up by 5 and we went down by 5, those two might be too big of a gap. So I need to figure out, like, how do you overall with the 3 parameters not stretch them too far away and make, like, we have crazy hard water, super low pH, and then really hot or really cold water. Like, that's just pulling the fish in all directions. We need to kind of pull it to a side or pull it to a side type of deal. So yeah, I'll think on that. That's a good project, I think. Yeah. All right. Is hair allergy really bad, and how do I get rid of it? Depends on what you want to do. Hair allergy is great for breeding fish. Some of my best production tanks were covered in hair algae. If you want a beautiful aquascape planet tank, hair algae is kind of the opposite of that, right? So I don't, in a strictly is it good or bad, it's very good for keeping fish alive. Looking at it, a lot of people say bad. So, yeah. New member, Unfiltered Aquarist. Welcome. Welcome to being unfiltered. All right. Where am I at? I'm at, okay, we got some time. I can start grabbing some generalized questions. This is, oh, I'm told that Aqua Advisor does exactly what I'm talking about. I will test that real quick, because in general, I hate that website. Because typically people always say, Aqua Advisor says this is right or wrong, and then I'm like, well, I don't know what to tell you other than I don't agree. I want to see, let me see if I can pull up a fish. Let's try the Adolphi Cory. We're going to add one of those. How do I add a filter, remove a filter, display in CM? There must be a part that I don't see yet to go display only suitable. Well, let's see. If I just hit, how do I make it? I don't know how to use this website to make it do what I want to do, especially on the fly. Start over, clear selections, copy and paste, advanced search, use juvenile sizes. Where's the tell me what I'm doing right or wrong? I'm going to add some Amano shrimp. Yeah, I figured it would be telling me stuff by now. And some Aurelius barbs. We're gonna add. Yeah. Why? Maybe if I click on it. Oh wait, we can. No, we can display in Fahrenheit. This is not. Choose an Eclipse tank. If I hit update. Okay, there we go. So it does. So it's okay. What it's saying is like with these group of fish, recommended temperature range 71.6 to 77, and recommended pH of 6 to 7.2, recommended hardness 5 to 15 DH. See, like I feel like that's too big of a spread. So maybe some fine tuning of the Aqua Advisor, because like a mono shrimp just really don't do well at 6. I mean, in my opinion, all fish don't do well at 6. So I feel like that should be at least 6.5. Let me add some crazy. Let me add a goldfish. What does that say when I add a goldfish? Okay, so now by adding one goldfish to that tank, it now says 71 to 73 degrees. Everything could live at that, I guess. But it also says pH at 6.5 to 7.2. Closer range, I like that. But that goldfish is really going to struggle anything under 7. Like, the reality is, like, that's brutal, right? It does say I'm 514% overstocked, which that's probably true because I've got a goldfish in a 3-gallon Eclipse tank. But what if I add a black pacu? Now it's 6 to 6.8. What if I add a guppy? Like I feel like if you were brand new to the hobby and you are purely using this, I'm not sure it's a great tool. It's good if you know a moderate amount about fish already. I feel like it's kind of useful, but at that point you almost don't need this. So I'm torn with trying to find a guppy on here. Gotta get to the G's. I just want to see. All right, guppy. I'm going to remove all the other fish. I just want to see what it recommends for a guppy. We'll see what I said versus what it says. Just for a, do we agree? All right, so it recommends 64 degrees to 82 degrees. I feel like that's a crazy spread. Like, if you were to buy Guppies off Aquabid and put them at 64 degrees, I think you would really struggle. I personally, so the pH recommended is 5.5 to 7.8. Like any guppy you're going to buy off of Aquabid or Twin City Guppies or my store, anything less than like 6.5 is for sure dead. That's just like 100%. Anything under 7, 6.5 to 7, you're really going to struggle. Yeah, I feel like that range is huge. That literally, it may as well just say anything at that point. And guppies can go higher than 7.8, that's for sure. Definitely more than they can go below 6. So, and I want to be clear here. I'm being hypercritical. I also realize they have an impossible task. I would love to have something super in-depth that, like this, built out, but what keeps me from doing it is it's dang near impossible to pull that off about every fish. Like, so just because I know the limitations of guppies because I absolutely love them, I wouldn't know the absolute, well, okay, I was gonna say the green streaked earth eater, but it's Biotodoma cupido. I've actually kept those before, but I've never heard them called that before. Cupid cichlid is normally the common name, but even that, like, it's such an impossible task that it's a great attempt, and they're trying to do the right thing, so I applaud that. But as someone who has to, a lot of people take this website as factual, and then I have to be like, well, how do I explain that I wouldn't agree with them? I'm not necessarily saying they're wrong, because I could also make a case of, like, wild-caught guppies can tolerate a much lower pH than non-wild-caught, but even 5.5 is still rough, right? And they could tolerate the 64 degrees, but they also might struggle at 82 being a feeder guppy, or not feeder, but wild guppy. So you know, with 917 species in that database, it would be hard to have good profiles on just 917, let alone start mixing the profiles to give people good info. It's a really hard task, which by all means, I hope they keep refining it, because once this thing becomes a well-oiled machine, whew, it'll be quite the resource. It'll be insane. But so far, I just have this lamenting fact of like, oh no, someone is using this and now they want to know, like I feel like, let's say I've got a guppy and let's add a goldfish back in. I don't know if it tells them to not do that. Whereas like a human definitely goes, yeah, don't do that. Let's see. Guppy is not recommended for your tank. It's too large because we're in a 3-gallon. Not recommended for your tank. Eventually outgrow the space. It doesn't say anything that like those two fish wouldn't be compatible. So it's got some work to do, but I wonder how, I feel like this page, if it had a great video that really explained, like, really take this with a grain of salt, realize we can't build it to factor in everything yet, use whatever you get here and really double check against other stuff, you know, I think that would go a long way. Because in general, people don't like reading, so. All right. So yes, I'm not trying to bag on them. I'm jealous of this task. I wish I had my own database this far. I'd be tempted to try and make it go further, but I have a feeling this is a project where you're like, I put 5 hours in every weekend for the last 7 years and I'm at this point, and I need another 40 years to make it what it needs to be. Like, it's just like, it's kind of like making Wikipedia as one person. It's like, it's got to be like crowdsourced, people you trust, and it's got to be a lot of work. So, yeah. All right. Enough about that. Let's get back into your guys' questions here, because that's what I'm here to do. And yeah. Maria says, heavily planned 29-gallon tank with 23 white clouds, 24 coolie loaches. That's a lot of coolies, by the way. 1 thick lip gourami, 1 tiny rubber lip pleco. I had to put in my bristle nose pleco. Am I heading for a crash? Let me think. So, what I would tell you is the amount of fish doesn't matter. It's the amount of food that matters. So whether you have 5,000 fish in there or 1 fish, they don't make the waste. Like, they're not the load. The load is how much you feed. Typically, we do feed based on how many fish we see. So if you're putting a ton of food in there because you go, oh, I've got way too many fish, you might be heading for a crash if you don't do the appropriate water changes. And what are the appropriate water changes? I don't know. Don't let nitrates get over 40. If you have to change water 4 times a week, you'll probably crash at some point. Oh, I got sick, I broke my arm, it was Christmas. You'll probably hit a crash at some point. But if you're like, I've got so many plants and I'm doing a 50% water change once a month and I'm feeding this amount of food and it works out fine, you'll probably never run into a problem. But yes, you're on the like, yeah, there's a fair amount of fish in there. But are you handling it all right? Great, you're handling it great. You know, I would say only you can know if you're heading towards a crash. You got to be honest with yourself going, you know what? This is easy. But if all of a sudden you just had a baby, or now you have 26 aquariums, or you know a new job comes up, start thinking about that. Like, I've been lightening loads and changing things for me being gone for like a month, right? So I'm going to be gone for kind of like a month, coming and going. I got to make sure I'm setting myself up for success and not just leaving things in a compact state. So Nathan says, I should make a disease identification app database with images. People could update their own pictures and see different looks to the disease. Yes, that would be great, except it takes a full-time job for someone to verify diseases. So how do we know it's ick? Or is it stress ick? Or is it just a cyst? Or was it actually velvet? Oh, is that picture clear enough? You know, there's all these things of just one disease. And then you start getting into more and more and more and more diseases. And the problem is you either charge a lot of money to warrant that staff, which that becomes hard and defeats the purpose. Or 2, you'll never get it done. So that becomes hard as well. But yes, in general, I definitely have some thoughts on how am I going to help identify more diseases, get people through more illness, and that kind of stuff. It's on my gotta figure out a good system agenda, if you will. All right. Isn't the Aquascaper app looking to do that? I'm pretty sure everyone's looking to do everything. It's all like proof in the pudding, right? Like, if I asked every one of you, are you guys looking to like open up a fish store at some point in your life? You're like, yeah, that'd be great. But it's all in the deployment of like, are you actually going to do it? Did you do it correctly? Were you able to overcome the speed bumps? Like, there's a lot of that kind of stuff that you're like, oh, I didn't realize. Oh, I didn't realize. Oh, I didn't realize. You know, I didn't realize that, oh, I'd have to put everything into Fahrenheit and Celsius. I'd have to put everything into parts per million and degrees hardness. I didn't realize I'd have to use micro Siemens and TDS. I didn't realize, like, there's all these things where you're like, oh, I didn't realize to actually help a bunch of people, I should be doing this in English, French, German, and Spanish. You know, you just start going like, this rabbit hole just never ends. Like, this is getting out of control, right? So, yes, I think everyone intends, like, I want to do great things. And then you go, oof, it's hard to do great things. Yeah. Little projects all of a sudden become huge projects when you're trying to really do something. Let's see. I think someone was asking, where do I buy, or where does everyone buy fish online? I think everyone's got their own things. I personally have bought fish from King Goldfish and Koi in the last month. I bought fish from Aquabid. I haven't bought anything from Twin City Guppies, but I need to look at his website. If he's got guppies in that I want, I'm going to order them and then maybe get them in when I get back. Let me see. I was going to do shopping today with you guys, but my website wouldn't work. Oh. But I still, like, on my wanting list, I've been waiting for over a year now. I still want the guppies that he's calling Santa Claus guppies. And I don't know if he's got them. When he does get them, I want them. I can't even remember what they look like. I just know every time I go on his website and I see them, I go, oh, gotta get me some of them Santa Claus guppies. So cool. Yeah, I'm not seeing them right now, but he's sold out of a lot of things, but I know he's got a lot of things in quarantine and that kind of stuff. I've given him a couple of sources as well. So hopefully he's making some things happen there. And, you know, I would point out it's a good thing, by the way. When you see that a lot of things are sold out, that usually means people are coming back to buy more. It's when it's like a limited supply where you got to question yourself, like, why is there unlimited? If this was good, wouldn't word be getting out and be selling out? Yeah. So, I mean, they could all have died too, but I happen to know that's not the case because I talked to Kang Lee, who owns Twin City Guppies. We talked to his wife. You know, like, yeah. What's the best way to end staghorn algae? My favorite way is something to eat it. Siamese algae eaters, Florida flagfish, mollies. Second to that is chemically, maybe like easy carbon, Excel, hydrogen peroxide. Those are really the only two ways that I ever do it. So, what? We got to smash the like button. We're only 3 away from 500. Come on, we can get there. We can do it. We can build a better robot. Hit that like button if you're still watching. If you're watching this in the future, realize the future is now. Because you're watching it someday after this, and this just came up while you're listening. This happened in the past. I'm talking to you now. Hit that like button. And subscribe already. By the way, I will say subscriptions are way up by me asking people to subscribe. So many people are like, fine, I'll finally subscribe. Even people have been like, I've been watching you for 2 years, never subscribed. I hit the button finally. Like, if that's the payment of like clicking a button, whew, I got a long road ahead of me. Welcome, Angel Lopez, becoming a member. That's what I'm talking about. And we got Wowine. Wait, Wowine? Is it Wowine or Wowine and Wet Sleeves? One of those two. So, yes. I will say I'm looking forward to World of Warcraft Classic. I plan to fully play that for a solid 4 hours and then never touch it again because I'll realize I'm way too busy And unfortunately, I don't have time to enjoy an activity like that. All right, lowest outdoor temperature for 100 gallon with guppies. So in my experience, Draco, I found that they really started falling apart for me under 60, definitely under 58. So I typically try to bring them in around 62, you know, or a little, like here's how I do it. I start like going, okay, we're getting towards the end of August. Weather still looks great. And then, you know, you're going, okay, it's going to turn at some point. I start watching the weather. Ooh, looks like it's going to rain and get worse. End of next week. All right, beginning of the week, I better bring them in. Because what's worse, there's nothing worse than trying to get them in the rain. They're already cold. They're getting sick. Like, oh, no, I've waited too long. No. And I've definitely had years like that where I got busy. And so I'd rather bring them in early than bring them in late. So I'm usually a little cautious. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll bring in half. And they'll be like, well, maybe I can grow the other half out for like another 3 or 4 weeks. I try to always start kind of harvesting the crop, if you will. So, welcome the Ginge 55. Is it Ginge or the Ginge? I don't know. Brandon, watched your video on breeding. Fell in love with guppies. Thank you. No, thank you. 3 pregnant Dumbo Platinum Red Tails and 3 pregnant Sunsets next week. That's what I'm talking about. Guppies are just awesome, and they're the perfect gateway fish to just being awesome. You know, if you're walking around in life and you're like, you know what, I think I'm not awesome. Get yourself some guppies, and within like 3 to 4 weeks, you'll be walking around telling people, I'm awesome. I'm awesome. It's weird how it just changes your life like that. I hear also hitting the like button and subscribing, becoming a member has the same effects, but, you know, I'd have to see the study on that. All right. Reading about WoW. Yes, I am going to either A, get horribly addicted and do PvP, or literally not play at all. Kind of hoping to get addicted because I could use like a 2 or 3 week break from business. And I mean, I still would go to work every day and everything, but I could do with only working like 8 hours a day for 2 or 3 weeks. It'd be good for me. So, yeah. Have I ever used aquaponics as a main source of filtration? I have to think. Because I've played with it so many times. I feel like the answer is no. Because I always end up putting a sponge on the intake. So even if I pump the water to something else, I actually believe the sponge is still doing the majority of the biological. I've played around with it a bunch, though, and I do like it. The closest might be where I was breeding Daphnia down to 55 and pumping the water to a green water tank that had koi in it, and then the green water would overflow back in and fill the Daphnia. That might be the closest, using green water as the aquaponic part. Yeah, I'm not quite sure. Yes. All right. Ooh, someone said, throw a heater in the ponds to stabilize the temperature. That can help, but a lot of times I don't have great power. Like I run, 50-foot airline tubing out there, and so I don't necessarily have power there. But yeah, and in general, my old fish rooms, I would have, like the closest power would be from the fish room, and I was already maxing those circuits out. Like any true fish nerd, there's no extra power in your house at all. Like you're maxing out everything, because that's how you know when you have a problem. When you go, where should I put this fish tank? And you're thinking, where do I still have enough power to run an aquarium? So yes. My wife texted me in here. Someone was asking the best way to help with breeding rare guppies for regular hobbyists. What's the program local clubs do? I can't remember the name about it. Talk about it for a hot second. I believe my wife is trying to remember the BAP program, the Breeders Award Program. A lot of clubs have the BAP. You get points, you spread them around the club, you do things like that. But in general, I think the best thing we can do to help hobbyists is if you're crazy enough like me to go spend $300 on a pair of guppies, when you make a bunch of them, the best thing you can do is sell them at a price that people can afford. So I try to think about, here's how I price my fish. So we all want the most amount of money possible because we want to buy more expensive things. But I think about this. What do I think is a price that is worth this guppy that they will love it as much as I do? And what do I mean by that? Maybe if you're 12 and you really love these guppies that I have, you would save up and mow people's yards for a month and then spend $30 on them. Like maybe that's the metric. But maybe if you worked and you made really good money, maybe you'd pay $100 for them. And so I start thinking, where do I make some money so I can buy the next one? And two, where will people appreciate them? Because if they're $5, people go, oh, give me some of those. If they live or die, I don't care. But maybe at $20 or $30, I think it's somewhere in that range, people go, hey, this is kind of expensive, and I really want these, so I'm going to take care of them, I'm going to invest my time and energy, and I'm going to make more of these. So most of our fancy guppies that are rare end up leaving our store somewhere between $18 and $30, somewhere in that range. And based on supply and demand and all that, and trying to recoup so that I can buy more expensive ones. But that's how I help the hobbyists go, well, if normally they're going for $300 a pair, let's make them $30 a pair. And then they're much more affordable for many more people. And as long as 10 people buy them from me, I can go buy the next $300 set. And it's kind of like crowdsourcing. So yeah, that's the best I got. Ricardo, I hope you remember Ricardo. Anyone that super chats, if in your country you can, I prefer that you just do a $5 super chat and become a member. Right? That way I'll still see your super chat. You become a member, you get all the behind the scenes stuff. It's all good. It says, hi Corey, is it okay if I use a 50-watt heater that's meant for a 7 to 16 gallon tank in a 5.5 gallon tank? Thank you for all you do for us newbies, and keep being awesome. Possibly is the answer. If it has a thermostat, yes. If it doesn't have a thermostat, no. So a 50 watt probably has a thermostat. It's going to cycle on and off a bit faster, but that's okay. If it ever went haywire, it could cook them faster. That's not okay, but yes, you could use it. I would use it. I'm a big advocate, even as a store owner. If I had an aquarium sitting right here and I had a 50-watt heater sitting across the room, and my option was, do I go buy a heater or do I use that one right there? I would just use that one right there. I would be like, I'll just use that one. I already own it. Doesn't cost me any more money. I always recommend, even as a guy that wants to sell you that heater, use what you got, reduce, reuse, recycle, make the environment better, and spend less money. And then my thought is, you'll probably spend that money with me anyway, buying these Fluval bug bites. They're awesome, which I do. They're here because I'm shooting a video about prepping for Peru and loading up some auto feeders and doing that kind of stuff and showing which foods I use for what type of fish. And so yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Brandon's taken the good advice, became a member because he's super chatted. That's what I'm talking about. We also have C Vang. Welcome. And we're getting to the non-fish related questions. We got about 15 minutes left. Unfiltered Aquarius says, what do you run as a main character? It's time to talk about WoW. Oh, and we got to talk about the CARES program. My wife wants to talk about the CARES program. I'll make her happy first. The CARES program, which is not applicable to these guppies, are for endangered fish in the wild. And that program would be, you take a rare fish like someone was talking about a Lake Victorian fish earlier that they had bred, and you keep it going, you get awards and stuff like that. So you get recognition for keeping it going. And then also, you have to, well, you don't have to, but you get on a list to other hobbyists that might want to keep that species going. You can sell it to them or provide them at a low cost. Like white clouds are on that list. I have in my possession, I have Pseudotropheus solosi, great looking African cichlid. When they start breeding, they'll be on the list, that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's a great overall program to help keep rare species alive and going in the hobby. But guppies aren't necessarily rare, and so they don't really need that extra boost of the cares. Like, I'm pretty sure endlers are actually on the list because they're at least threatened and endangered. They keep finding new populations, so. But back to the WoW. As a WoW player or an EverQuest player or anything I do in my life, I become fanatical. So in business, there's no Corey only works 4 hours and then stops working. It's Corey works until he falls asleep, and at the keyboard, that's what I do. So in WoW, what main did I play? Oh, God. I'm definitely not Alliance, so definitely Horde. But what main did I play? I played everything. As I've been a guild leader, I've been raid leader, I've been on lots of competitive PvP teams. I've played basically every character at max level up until about Wrath of the Lich King. And I'm a Swiss Army knife when it comes to that. I'm able to be proficient in most things I do. Now, being a Swiss Army knife also means you're not the absolute best at everything you do. So, but in general, I'm trying to think of the only class that maybe I didn't really play seriously high level would be Druid. Even though there were times when I would sub in as a Resto Druid on PvP teams for a buddy and that kind of stuff. So, but, you know, yeah, about everything. Orc Shaman. One of our employees is going to play an Orc Shaman in the new WoW Classic so they can have the old Wind Fury algorithm. But yes. Yeah, that's all I do. I walk around as Wind Fury stuff and just no skill at all. Just, oops, I accidentally killed stuff. But, yes. But what that means is, like, also I've been, I got with a personal trainer to get in shape for Peru. And I would say become fanatical about it. I basically work out every single day. Lately, that's only been about 5 to 6 times a week. And I really enjoy it. So that's the problem, and that's why I don't get into salt water. That's why I don't do dart frogs. Why I don't do other things is real quickly, all of a sudden, my life is only about those instead of working, right? And so I have to be very careful that, you know, even right now, there are days when I work out and then I go back and I work out again because I have that addictive personality of like, you know, I'm not quite sore and I feel like I could just work out more today. So I go do it, right? And so same thing can happen with anything else in my life. Oh man, I'm all about, you know, whatever it is. And then like I get fanatical. My wife will attest to that. You know, maybe the thing my wife says to me the most, like, okay, dear, just don't get too crazy. And apply that to like anything in my life. That she probably just has that like on a button at this point. Just, okay, dear, don't get too crazy. Don't go too crazy. So, yeah. All right. I'm going to answer some actual fish questions, though. Anyone ever breed zebra plecos? You'll get a little info in a video coming up about Dean's Fish Room. His have bred. Yes. What do I recommend as substrate for a planted puffer tank? I've heard you say to do sand for puffers, but not for plants. Should I put sand on top of Eco Complete? What you're looking for, Steph, is a coarse sand. My favorite sand for puffers and with plants would be called Lapis Luster, Lapisluster, 0.8 grain. Now that's pretty specific, but I'm a pretty specific guy because I've tried 0.10, I've tried 0.6, I've tried 0.2, I've tried like 0.8 is a sweet spot. It's great. It's already washed and kiln dried. It's hard to find sometimes in some areas, but that's the one. That's the one that's mixed in here with the goldfish. It's in some of my tanks in the fish room. It's in the Murphy's tank. Yes, that's the one. So, got a new member, Mike S. Welcome to the team, bro. I assume you're a dude. I don't know. I'm addicted to eating pizza and watching anime. There's worse things. Yeah. How do you anchor hornwort? Mine grows so fast it wants to cover the top of the tank, and my gold dojo loaches are constantly digging in the sand from under the rocks, holding it down. So, hornwort is a floating plant. It never actually grows roots. When you put it into the gravel or sand, it's only going to rot. The best you can hope for is a lead weight on the bunch, and it will sink down, but eventually that'll rot out and it'll float back up. So you're basically trying to force a plant to do something it doesn't want to do. It is a floating plant only. You might get better results out of maybe ambulia, maybe guppy grass, maybe anacris or elodia. Those are kind of similar in that vein, but will root for you. I hear some alien bettas are infertile. Any ideas? I have no idea. It's the first time I've heard that. I could believe an internet rumor just as easily or not. I have no idea. You know, a lot of times people will say that, you know, like let's say Dean tried to breed an alien betta and couldn't breed it. He might say, oh, it must be infertile. Or it could be we just are not good at breeding them, you know. I did consider doing a WoW guild for Aquarium Co-op people. I also thought about live streaming it for members, but the more I thought about it was like, why do I want to turn the one thing I'm going to do in my life that isn't work related into work? And then I was like, you know what? I should probably not turn it into work. I may, and I'm not promising this at all. At all. I may post to like the members, here's the server I'm playing on and my name. I will not answer a single business related question in game ever. In fact, I'll ignore you if you ask me. But if you want to ask something about like, hey, we need a fifth for, you know, this BRD run, you in? Like, as long as I get to be a gamer and not be a business guy for an hour out of my night, you're just as welcome as anyone else, right? But if I got to be like, hey, Corey, you know, my Guppy's doing a Guppy thing. I know you're tanking this boss right now, but hit me up. Like, don't want to do that. So, the Coop Barbecue? I know, I need to do a big event. Without spoiling stuff, I have someone in mind that I'm trying to hire that I think will be very good for planning local events and remote events and that kind of stuff. And if I can pull that off, it's going to be great. But, one, I don't want to say who it is. Two, we'll see how good they are at it. And three, I don't want to promise and then not deliver. So I'm working on it, though. Yeah. Maybe if I really am enjoying the WoW grind, if you will, and everyone keeps it non-business related, we can even do like a vent or TeamSpeak server or something. But I gotta warn you, I'm salty when I lose in PvP. It's not good. All right. We got a few minutes left. Let's get back to some fish stuff because people that are listening on the podcast and showed up here like, what is this idiot doing? Well, he's trying to build a rapport with his fans and be an honest dude. That's what he's doing. Welcome to the new member, I don't even team, I guess, Colin Stevenson. And I do know you guys have been noticing my wicked good hat here. I am not 100% in love with this hat. And it's the green. This green, it gets a little dirty faster than I'd like. So I did order the mesh-backed hats. I believe tracking says they get here the 12th, which is 5 days. Then we're instantly going to ship one to Jimmy. Jimmy's going to photograph it. Then hopefully one of our lovely employees is going to add the pictures to the website, then you guys would be able to buy one. That being said, we'll be in Peru, and so I won't be able to oversee any of that. So you might be able to get this really cool gray and blue color that I think is going to look cooler at a reasonable price. And why did I order that color? Because that's the color I wanted. And I run my business. If I'd like that, maybe other people will like that. And if no one likes it, I'll wear them all. I'll wear them all at the same time. So, yes. Do I plan on carrying more different varieties of plants? And maybe some more difficult ones? Maybe. So more difficult plants? Unlikely. Because when you sell to thousands and thousands and thousands of people a month, and half of them struggle to keep Java Fern alive, those same person bought Java Fern and Dwarf Baby Tears, and now are super angry their Dwarf Baby Tears are dying. So it's one of those like, do I want to get more into the we hate aquarium co-op because they have crappy plants mantra? Or do I want to keep setting people up for success? I like that a lot better. So, are we going to widen our varieties? Yes. How fast is that going to happen? Yes. I have no idea. What I do know is I reached out to our vendors this week specifically, and I said, hey, these plants that are not in stock and have not been in stock for a while, what is going on? I need official answers. Do I need to drop this plant? What is going on? And so like Hygrophila pinnatifida, not coming back in. Mayaka, not coming back in. Java moss on wood should come back in at some point. Good example. The Anubias nanopetite bowls that come in the ceramic bowl. We've been ordering them, and every time we order them, we get a smaller size. And we're just like, one time we didn't realize we got a smaller size. We shipped them out, and the internet lost their minds. They were super pissed. We learned from that going, wow, people are super pissed. What's going on? Oh, they're a little bit smaller than the other ones. Okay. So then we stopped bringing them in. And I finally go, what's the deal? And then they finally asked, and it was lost in interpretation the first time. The factory that was making those bowls no longer make that size. They're never coming back because the bowl doesn't exist. That's why they switched to a smaller bowl. Now I got to order some. I got to get some to Jimmy. We got to measure it, photograph it, change the price. I think the price goes down by like $1 or $2, and then put them back on the website. Then people can buy them, right? But yes, there are other plants we want to bring in. If you're watching the behind the scenes stuff, you'll see that the warehouse is not completely done. We, as of yesterday, have the second row of tanks. So now our plant capacity is like 3 or 4x what it was. And I want to slowly start bringing on species. So maybe I want to bring on a new species per week. Something manageable. Why only one per week, Corey? We want all the things tomorrow. Well, I would like all of my employees, both in-store and online, to be knowledgeable about the plant. I want everyone to know how it comes in. Does it look good or bad? How long does it take to start looking good? What are we watching out for? And then move on to the next one. Instead of like, here's 26 new species. You guys have never seen that. You don't know what would a good or a bad one look like. You don't know how long it's going to take to convert. When they ask you a question online, you're not going to know how to answer it. Where do we put them in the store? There's all these little things of like, oh, yes, scalability is a thing. So it is my intent once I get back to go, okay, what's the next best plant I think I want to bring in? What's the next best one? Okay, what's the next best one? And I have to write descriptions. I have to educate people. Like ones that we have that are highly likely would be like Limnophilia aromatica. But they typically have the problem of immerse grown, melt back really hard. I got to do a lot of education so that people don't go, hey, this thing's dying, you sold me a bad plant. Instead go, this thing's doing what it's supposed to do. This thing's going to be gorgeous in about 6 weeks. Oh, glad I bought it, right? So I have to make sure that education's there, maybe the video's there, maybe all those little steps are there. Then we move on to the next one, right? Yeah. All right. You could do as Ferrari does and sell only high-end plants to high-end customers? Yes, Ryan, I could. I would make less money. It would be more difficult. And we would brand it under a different website. Yes. So it might be like, highendplants.com. And then we could just have a dedicated team of people to do that. And that would be its thing. And that would be totally separate. Definitely could. And not out of the realm of possibility, by the way. Could do that someday. So, welcome, Rescue Dog Treats. Been a long time. Hanger-outer, as I call you. You've been around the channel a long time. Welcome. Yes, Java wood size differs. The problem is, no matter how many times I tell people, live plants, pieces of wood, rocks, they're all different. They're all a little bit different. And even people are like, why can't you just standardize it? Because when you go and you talk to the people at the farms, they can't control the sun. They're trying with shade cloths, and the sun's beaten down in the middle of August, and flowers are coming out of the plants, which is hindering their growth. If they let them sit there an extra 2 weeks, they make extra flowers. They don't get taller, they make more flowers. So in the winter, the plant might be this tall, right? But in the summer, it's this tall. And people order in the winter and now get this plant. They go, how dare you ship me half the plant? And it's like, I paid the same amount of money. You've got maybe a week or two different growth once it's in your water because it won't be literally getting the sun. The other option is don't have it 6 months out of the year. So we choose hey, there's going to be some variation because nature. That's why. Nature. Yeah. The struggles of the live thing. That's why a lot of companies don't do anything live, is the variance. Like this thing in this food will be the same every time. Very easy product to sell. A plant, on the other hand, very difficult. You got to train a lot of employees on that kind of stuff. So, all right, it's 7:04. I'm probably stepping on someone's toes. It's live streaming right now, and I have to get ready for Peru. Well, it's probably dark now. I need to go spray my clothes with bug stuff. Yep, that's part of the procedure. Dean already did it today, so I'm running behind. And yeah, hit the like button. Subscribe already, please. I feel like this is, if you're watching a live stream for 2 hours, you owe it to yourself to go ahead and subscribe at this point. Like, I get it. If you watched a 5-minute, like, here's a little video, I'll never watch that guy again. But if you're watching the 2-hour live stream, come on. I know you got to log in. I know you forgot your password. I know it's a lot to ask, but even that little bit goes a long way to show the algorithm, like, hey, this guy's not absolute trash. He's only like mid-tier trash. So, yeah. To everyone that became a new member, thank you very much. Which we have Michael Faulkner as well. Howdy do. And yes, I will try to have a very safe trip. I will try to get awesome, great footage. I'm bringing a better arsenal of cameras. We're bringing solar panel rechargers, so hopefully we won't run out of battery. There's all these things that now the second trip, I think we're going to do it better. First time was pretty good. I think the second time is going to be even better. We'll do everything we absolutely can for you guys. Like, this is a trip for you. Everyone goes, you're going to have a great time. Like, no. I am going to work so hard to get footage for you guys that it ends up being a ton of work. And then I reflect on it and I watch my own videos. What people don't realize is I'm not even there in the moment. I'm filming. And then I watch the video that Jamie puts together. Wow, we did some awesome stuff. But you're so in the moment, you don't realize, you're like, oh, that was awesome. Dang, that was cool. So I will try my absolute hardest. And then we come back and I've got a trip to Florida. I might be able to get to film a fish farm there. That might be super cool. And then I go speak at Coast, which is a California club. Details on our Facebook, Costa Mesa Club, on the 1st, I think. So all those trips kind of back to back to back, and then I'm back. That's why I won't get to really play WoW at the launch or anything like that. I'll probably get to play a week later, and then I'll be so far behind that I'll just be like, I don't want to play anyway. Well, so yes. All right, I gots to go. Ooh, I do want to say congratulations to people that made the taco level in the members. So when you see the taco next to someone's name, That means they've been a member for an entire year. That's crazy to think about. And there was multiple of them in this live stream today. Super cool. There'll be more and more. I don't want to say that. I could be a horrible person and no one else gets there because they hate me. But I hope to see more and more of those taco-related people there and use them as a resource. The people that have a taco next to their name, if they've been following me for a year, they're likely to have a great source. Like, in Daily Dose episode number 29, he talked about that exact subject. Go check it out. They've been following a lot of what we're doing, so they're a great resource. They're kind of like that old guy at the fish club. That guy's seen some fish, man. Yes, that's right. If you're a taco, even Candy, you're now the 70-year-old fish guy. Sorry, had to say it. But a lot of knowledge in those people. At least they know how to get you around what we're doing. And I'm very appreciative that they have, stuck with me for a year. Yeah, that's longer than some employees. Is that true? We had one guy that quit because he wanted to follow his career, his passion of music. But other than that, people have been there with us for longer, so I had to make sure that was a true statement. Anyway, thanks for hanging out, and we will see you on the flippity floppity. I think Michael Scott says that. All right, we're done.